I cheated with the dentist my husband was paying to fix my smile, but he got revenge, exposed me publicly, and left me toothless, without a home and alone. My name is Gabriella, I am 34 years old, and I am an esthetician. For many years, I led a life that to outsiders was almost perfect. I was married to Eduardo, a 45-year-old baker and businessman, owner of a chain of 5 bakeries throughout the city. Eduardo was everything they say is impossible to find nowadays: hardworking, loving, stable, and above all, loyal. He took care of me as if I were a prize. He supported me, he spoiled me, and he even paid for my complete orthodontic treatment, saying that I deserved to smile without insecurities. And it was exactly that smile that I used to destroy his life. The betrayal did not begin with flowers or daring messages. It all began in the office of Enrique, the 39-year-old orthodontist who was taking care of my dental braces. Enrique was the typical man who knows his own charm, confident, in a good mood, and with an attractive way of approaching any topic. He treated me as if I were more than a patient. At first, I thought it was fun. Eduardo paid for everything, even the extra adjustment sessions. I just needed to show up and lie back in the chair. But little by little, I started spending more time there than necessary, and it was not because of the braces. Yes, I cheated on Eduardo, the hardworking baker who woke up at 4 in the morning, only returned at night, tired, but still willing to hug me and ask me how my day was. I cheated on that man with the same professional he hired to take care of me. It sounds dirty said like that, and it is. Dirty, despicable, and stupid, but I continued like someone who watches their own house burn and refuses to call the firefighters. I preferred to watch everything fall apart in silence. The worst part, I knew I was wrong, and yet I went deeper. Enrique and I kissed for the first time in a treatment room that smelled of 70% alcohol with the sounds of equipment in the background. It was not romantic, it was not pretty, it was impulsive and stupid. I had just come back from a long session, and he said my smile was more dangerous with every visit. I smiled back, he put his face against mine, and it happened. Instead of backing away, I gave in. I left there dizzy, not from the anesthetics, but from the dirty excitement of doing something forbidden and paid for by my husband. The meetings began to intensify. I used excuses like my brackets came loose again, my gums are swollen, I need to change the rubber band, and poor Eduardo believed it. He was a baker, he was not suspicious. While he spent the night kneading dough, I was lying in a chair receiving kisses from another man, a man who knew I was married, who knew my husband, and yet did not hesitate. We were both accomplices in the betrayal, but as always, the woman is the one who bears the greatest mark. I felt divided. At the same time that I enjoyed this game of risk and desire, I slept next to a man who was still good to me. Eduardo did not deserve it, but a part of me thought I could keep everything under control, live a double life without anything leaking out. I did not realize that the rope was already being stretched too thin, and it would break in the most cruel way possible, because when the day of the discovery came, there was no room for doubt or for forgiveness. Eduardo was always the type of man who seemed to come out of a manual on how to be a good husband. He worked hard at the bakeries, came home exhausted, but still brought me flowers. He insisted on having dinner with me and asked me if my braces hurt. He said that a beautiful smile changes your life, and that is why he wanted me to have the best possible treatment, even if it was expensive. He never complained about the expenses, never suspected my delays. Our marriage, in the eyes of others, was an example of stability and complicity, and I myself believed it for a long time. We lived in a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, with all the good and the best. Eduardo insisted on decorating the house to my taste. He bought new furniture, changed the appliances, and even let me choose the color of the walls. He said that my comfort was a priority, and I pretended to value it. On the outside, I was the smiling wife who posted stories with phrases like "blessed to have a man like this." On the inside, I was already immersed in lies and, the worst part, I began to believe that I was too smart to get caught. I had freedom. He trusted me so much that he barely bothered to check schedules, passwords, or routes. It was common for me to go out to take care of something at the salon and come back hours later, and Eduardo would welcome me kindly, sometimes with a coffee waiting on the stove. When I traveled with friends to a beauty retreat, he paid for everything. When I asked him to take a training course, he told me, "Go, love, you deserve more than this routine." He was the pillar, and I was the invisible crack that was growing little by little. Enrique, the dentist, was the subtle opposite of Eduardo, younger, vain, with that air of someone who thinks he is irresistible. While my husband wore a white uniform stained with flour, Enrique wore a starched coat, an imported watch, and impeccable hair. I told him that I did not care about that I loved the simple man that Eduardo was, but when I was alone in the office, my speech died at the first contact, at the first prolonged glance, and that is when my hypocrisy showed its teeth. Our marriage had a solid foundation, but the wear and tear of routine was beginning to make noise. I felt a lack of excitement, of feeling desired, or at least that is what I told myself to justify what I was doing. Eduardo still praised me, but maybe I wanted to hear it from someone else. He still touched me with affection, but maybe I wanted to be touched quickly with lust, as Enrique did. The truth is that it was not about what I did not receive, but about what I stopped valuing. The betrayal, deep down, did not start with Enrique. It began within me when I started to confuse stability with monotony, love with obligation, affection with predictability. I wanted more, I just did not know that this more would have such a high price. And the more I pretended that everything was fine, the more I got entangled in a web of lies that at some point I could no longer hide. It all started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Enrique, the orthodontist, always had that gallant attitude, a little too informal for a doctor's office. At first, I thought he treated all his patients like that, with jokes about the most beautiful smile in the clinic and compliments on my perfume. But over time, I noticed that the appointments lasted longer than necessary. He got closer than the protocol required, touching my face to adjust my chin in a way that made my spine tingle. And I let him. The first time I realized he had crossed the line was when he called me his orthodontics baby and winked at me. I laughed, not because I thought it was funny, but because I was nervous. The room was silent, the sound of the drill had stopped, and for a few seconds our eyes met with a strange tension in the air. It was wrong, I knew it, but it was also exciting. I left that appointment with my heart racing, and it was not because of the anesthesia. That day I deleted my Waze history, even without being asked. I was already hiding it. At the next appointment, he deliberately delayed seeing the next patient. He left me there alone while he turned off the office lights and put on ambient music. When he returned, he leaned in behind me, said that my smile was becoming too dangerous, and slowly turned me around with his hands on my face. The kiss happened right there, silent, forbidden, with a taste of mint and regret. I should have stopped, but instead, I closed my eyes and wished for more. The next week there was no kiss, there was surrender. He locked the room door, saying he was going to do a deep cleaning. He lowered the blinds and laid me back in the reclining chair. I did not react, in fact, I leaned in. I was wearing a light dress that he hastily lifted. His hands were trembling, mine too, and there, on all fours in that chair where my husband paid for every session, I gave myself completely. Fast, intense, hot, not even the muffled moans could hide what we did. I left there with my mouth throbbing from the braces and another pain that could not be solved with painkillers. After that, there was no turning back. We started having sex in any available space, in the back of the clinic, in a file room, even in his car in the locked parking lot. Enrique said I drove him crazy, and I believed him. It made me feel alive in a sick way. We started arranging meetings in discreet motels in the north, where he said no one would find us. I invented extra treatment sessions, fictitious inflammations, any excuse to spend another afternoon with him. The messages became more frequent, intimate photos, quick videos, indecent audios, all hidden in the second cell phone I bought with money from my own emergency account. Eduardo never suspected. He continued to kiss me on the forehead, asking if my braces hurt, paying the monthly installments cheerfully, saying that everything for your smile is worth it. I spent hours at the clinic in consultation and came home with a sore mouth from the braces and from using it so much with Enrique, and my soul in tatters. And I, a hypocrite, gave him back a dirty smile, shaped by another man, and with each lie I dug deeper into the hole where I would bury my marriage. Enrique did not ask me about my life outside of there. He did not want to know about Eduardo, about feelings, about the future. It was sex, it was an impulse, it was pleasure for the sake of pleasure. And I pretended that this was freedom, but little by little what seemed like my most passionate secret became my biggest nightmare, because every encounter left traces, and I was about to be caught in the most humiliating way possible, with all my teeth still in treatment, but my soul already completely rotten. The first time I felt the world shake beneath my feet was on a Sunday afternoon. We were in the living room watching television, Eduardo lying on the couch with his head in my lap, as always. I used my cell phone carelessly, maybe out of overconfidence, maybe because my mind was already so numb from the double routine that I forgot the risk. And then the notification arrived, a pop-up message on the alternative WhatsApp. That moan of yours from yesterday is still in my head. The name Enrique, without disguise, without code. Eduardo lifted his head and read. It took him 2 seconds to turn his face and look at me. I felt my stomach turn to ice. What is that? He asked, half confused, half serious. My brain went into panic mode. Spam. They are cloning my number, love. These scams are getting more and more audacious, I said, trying to laugh. He looked at his cell phone for a few seconds. I got up quickly, said I needed to go to the bathroom, and went to delete everything. Block the number, delete the history, the files, even the keyboard felt hot in my hands. I was locked in for more than 15 minutes, sweating, trembling, breathing heavily. It was as if my whole body knew that the house of cards was about to collapse. When I returned, he was no longer in the room. He was in the kitchen, washing dishes, as if nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek and asked me if I wanted pizza later. It destroyed me more than if he had confronted me, because there I realized that maybe he knew, and if he did not know, he was trying not to know. That night I did not sleep. I reviewed every detail of the routine, every flaw, every conversation that could have given something away. I started to become paranoid about clues. I changed passwords, activated screen locks, created alerts to prevent messages from appearing without me seeing them. I started using incognito modes for everything. Enrique found my desperation amusing. He said I was overreacting. He cannot even imagine it. Gabby, relax. But I knew Eduardo was not an idiot. He was just quiet, the type who observes before acting. In the following encounters, I could no longer enjoy them as before. Even when we were together in a motel room with our sweaty bodies and moans muffled by the pillow, my mind was at home. I wondered if Eduardo had discovered something new, if he had checked my closet, if he had found the second SIM card. Every orgasm was accompanied by guilt. Enrique noticed my distance, but said it was the freshness of a married woman. I pretended to smile, but inside, fear had already taken over her. It was then that I began to have nightmares. I dreamed of Eduardo looking at me in silence, with his eyes full of pain. In one of them, he was smiling with my teeth in his hand, a perfect smile torn out. I woke up in the middle of the night wanting to cry, to run to him and confess everything, but I never had the courage. And maybe it was this complicit silence, this cowardice of mine, that gave him enough time to set up the takedown, because when he moved, he left nothing standing. The discovery was not a fight. There were no screams or tears. It was surgical, cold, calculated. Eduardo came home early, which was already strange, with an expression that did not match the calmness of the afternoon. I was in the kitchen, stirring some juice when he came in and left a thick envelope on the table. I said nothing. He just stared at me. I asked him if everything was okay, and he replied, "Open it." My hands were trembling even before I touched the paper, and when I opened it, the floor disappeared from under my feet. Inside the envelope were dozens of printouts, photographs, and screenshots of conversations, messages with Enrique, nudes I did not even remember sending, audios of me saying things that made me want to vomit. It had dates, times, including videos. Eduardo, the man who got up at 4 in the morning to make bread, had assembled a complete file with every step of my betrayal. "You thought I was stupid. I was just waiting for you to dig all the way to the bottom," he said without raising his voice. That destroyed me more than if he had shouted. I tried to speak, I cried, I knelt. He did not touch me. He simply said, "You will not need to explain it to me. You will explain it to everyone." And he left. I thought it was a metaphor. It was not. Less than 2 hours later, I began to receive notifications. Friends sending me screenshots, family members calling me. When I opened Instagram, I almost fainted. Eduardo had published a carousel of images with the caption, "While I was paying for her smile, she was smiling for another." He tagged me, he tagged Enrique's office, he even tagged my mother. The messages exploded. The shame was instantaneous. I tried to check social media to delete it, but it was already too late. The posts had already been reposted by city gossip profiles. They started calling me the baker's unfaithful wife. A neighborhood group spread the screenshots via WhatsApp. People who had never spoken to me in their lives began to send me hate messages. Enrique disappeared. He deleted the alternative number, blocked my accounts, and in less than a day, he changed his profile picture and posted appointments suspended for restructuring. And that is when the worst happened. Eduardo kicked me out of the house that same day. There was no discussion. He simply went into the room, opened my closet, put my clothes in a suitcase, and dragged everything to the door. "This is my house. I bought it even before I met you. You just lived here. Please. And favors have a limit," he said with a firm voice and an empty gaze. He handed her the car keys and added, "You can keep the car. You will need it to chase another man." When I tried to tell him we could talk, he let out a dry laugh. "Talk? You talked to Enrique while you were moaning in the office, and then you came to ask me for affection." Before closing the door, he spat out the last sentence like poison. "Oh, and about your teeth, I canceled the treatment. You have to pay for it yourself. But on second thought, the way you used that mouth to please the dentist, maybe you can finish the treatment on your knees." And he left. Without a scream, without a tear, just silence, contempt, and justice. I was left on the sidewalk with my bags, my keys, and a hole in my chest where a life used to be. And, ironically, with my teeth still being straightened, as if the world were forcing me to chew every little piece of my shame. If I thought the worst was over when Eduardo threw me on the sidewalk, it was because I still did not understand the power of social media and people's tongues. The post he made went viral in a matter of hours. People who had never met me began to attack me publicly. They called me the dentist's girl, the one with the smile of betrayal, the one who lost her teeth for cheating on the baker. Every comment was a stone, every repost a slap. The humiliation was not just online. It invaded the real world with a force I never imagined. The next day, I went to Enrique's office, not because I wanted to see him, but because I still had scheduled sessions. The receptionist would not even let me in. Dr. Sylvia suspended all services related to Dr. Enrique, including yours. She said this with a mocking smile on her face, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. I stood at the door with my mouth open, and it was not even because of the orthodontics. When I tried to question her, she ignored me. I went back to the car with a bitter taste in my throat that not even mouthwash could get rid of. Clients began to cancel appointments at my beauty space. One of them said via message, "I do not feel comfortable being treated by a woman who does what you did." Even other professionals in the field cut ties with me. "My reputation is worth more than an association with you," said a colleague with whom I shared a rented room. It was as if I had contracted a social disease, a kind of moral leprosy, a label that no one wanted. People no longer saw a woman as something bad, but as a plague. My mother called me crying, not to comfort me, but to say that my aunt, a fervent evangelical, was threatening to cut ties with the family if she continued to defend me. "You destroyed your image and ours too," she said. My sister blocked me, my cousin stopped liking my posts, even my 12-year-old goddaughter sent me an audio saying she did not want to come to my house anymore because she was afraid of what they would say at school. I was a stain, a warning of do not be like her. And Enrique, a coward to the end, disappeared. He no longer answered me, he took the name off the clinic door, He went silent, and little by little he was erasing any trace of our story, as if it were a bad phase, a mid-season distraction. I, who felt desired, was now invisible, or worse, visible only as a joke, an example of what not to do. The woman who traded stability for adventure and ended up toothless, homeless, and nameless. With the cancellation of the orthodontic treatment, I looked for other clinics, but the cost of continuing was very high and, of course, no one paid in installments without having a credit history, and my name was dirty in every sense. I began to feel ashamed to smile. I wore a mask even outside of the pandemic. My cheeks hurt from forcing my face to be neutral. The irony is that my greatest punishment was precisely having to hide what motivated the whole tragedy, the smile that Eduardo tried to give me, and I threw it in the trash. After all, the first time I saw myself in the mirror, alone in the bathroom of a cheap hotel, it was like looking at another person. I was missing half of my teeth, literally. The upper part still had the device attached, but the elastics and wires were loose, crooked, making my smile grotesque. The lower part was worse, with visible gaps and sore gums. The promise of a perfect smile became the portrait of my ruin. My reflection was that of a deformed woman, a woman who traded everything for nothing. I could barely eat. I had to spend days eating soup and smoothies, hiding my mouth even from myself. I began to chew with shame, avoiding mirrors and cameras. I smile again in any interaction, even when the delivery person wishes me a good morning. The physical pain was bearable, but the shame was a prison without bars. I walked the streets thinking that everyone knew who I was, as if my face were plastered on a poster with the phrase, "The woman who cheated on her husband with the dentist." The emotional impact was even worse. I had anxiety attacks that made me wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, with the feeling that everyone was laughing at me. Sometimes I would listen to an old audio from Enrique just to remember what happened in the suit, as a kind of self-flagellation. At other times, I took the photos that Eduardo published and forced myself to see each image as a punishment. I withdrew from everything. I lost clients, I lost friends, I lost the trust even of those who never interacted with me. My reputation turned into digital dust. The loneliness was deafening. Although I had the car, I had nowhere to go. I spent 2 weeks sleeping in it, parked in my cousin's garage, who only let it be out of pity, but did not speak to me once. The messages that came to my cell phone were not comforting. They were of humiliation, of mockery, of people laughing at my misfortune. Homeless and smile less, right? That was one of the ones that hurt the most. The internet is relentless and, in my case, the poetic justice was public and brutal. I tried to seek psychological support, but even the therapist seemed uncomfortable when she recognized my story. "You are the one in the email, right?" That was her first sentence. I canceled the next session. At that moment, I had lost not only my smile, but also my identity. I was no longer Gabriella, the esthetician, the wife, the good woman. She was the dentist's cheater, the one with no teeth, the stupid one who was exposed on the internet. My name became synonymous with shame. Even introducing myself was painful. Until I heard myself in the mirror, the body responds to emotional pain in strange ways. I lost weight, I developed severe gastritis, and I had hair loss that forced me to cut my hair. My menstrual cycle was completely deregulated. I felt as if every part of me was falling apart at the same time, as if my body wanted to punish me along with the rest of the world. And the cruelest part of all is that no one stopped me. I did not need slaps or attacks. The truth was enough, brazen, raw, in the form of footprints and gazes, to completely destroy me. After weeks of public humiliation, emotional hunger, and isolation, what was left in me was silence. And within it arose regret, a regret that tore at my insides as if acid had been poured into my guts. I tried to write a letter to Eduardo. It was all I could do without crying compulsively. I scribbled, tore it up, and started again. In the end, I sent a simple letter, handwritten, like in the old days. "Forgive me," the envelope said. I waited 3 days for a response. It never came. I insisted. I sent messages on WhatsApp, all of which were seen and ignored. I called from my old number and from my new number. He blocked both. I tried to go to the bakery where he worked. I could not even get in. An employee saw me on camera and, seconds later, the automatic door would not open for me. I became a forbidden presence in the life of someone who once gave me the world. And, the cruelest part, I deserved every closed door, every block, every second of silence, because I was the time bomb that destroyed everything. Only, desperate, I went to his mother's house. She looked at me through a crack in the window and just said, "The Gabriella we knew is dead. Bury her too." And she closed the curtain. I went back to the car crying. No one wanted to hear my side of the story, and honestly, whose side was I on? I betrayed the man who loved me. I exposed our life to ridicule. I threw away what every woman says she dreams of, all for a man who disappeared at the first sign of trouble. In my last attempt, I sent a long email. I detailed everything. I talked about remorse, suffering, shame. I asked him to listen to me one last time. Hours later, I received a response with a single sentence: "You smiled at another man, Gabriella. Now deal with that broken smile." I reread it dozens of times. It was poetic, cruel, necessary, as if he had waited for that moment just to bury me with a sentence. And that is exactly what happened. At that moment, hope died. That was the day I stopped trying. The mourning for the marriage became a silent reality. I deleted all the photos, I unpacked the folders with souvenirs, and I put the ring in a small box along with everything that was left of the woman I was. Eduardo moved on with his life. I saw a picture of him months later, next to a beautiful woman with a new smile on her face. Mine, still in incomplete treatment, as if fate wanted to mark that only one of us had the chance to start over with dignity. Today, I still think about Eduardo every day. When I brush my teeth, I am careful not to hurt the loose metal wires. When I pass by his bakery and see the huge lines, when I hear someone say, "Smile more," I feel like hiding. I lost him, but more than that, I lost the right to be seen with respect. All for making a choice that I carry to this day, in my teeth, in my name, in people's eyes, and mainly, in the lack of forgiveness. Betrayal is a poison that we think we can control. A drop here, another there, a buried secret, a well-told lie. But what no one tells you is that, in the end, the person who dies from poisoning is always the one who serves the glass. I thought I was in control. I thought I could play with fire and come out unscathed, that Eduardo would never find out, that Enrique would always be there, that nothing would escape my grasp. But it did, and it hit me like a hurricane, tearing away everything I was, and leaving only what I deserved to carry. The most ironic thing of all is that my punishment did not come in the form of aggression or physical revenge. It came in the form of silence, of exclusion, of contempt. It came from the looks of the people who crossed my path at the market, in stories that indirectly talked about me, in the ignored requests for quotes, in the empty chairs of my beauty studio. It was a cancellation that did not just come from the internet, but from real life. I was wiped off the map as a person, and it all started with a kiss in the dentist's chair. Today, I see what I did as someone analyzing a failed surgery. Everything was open, exposed, pulsating, and I stitched it up with rotten thread. My marriage was imperfect, like any other, but it was solid. It had love, it had respect, and I betrayed it. I became the kind of person I always swore I hated, the kind of woman other women use as an example of what not to be. And as much as it hurts to admit it, this is my cross to bear. I was my own destroyer. The most painful part is knowing that, even if time went back, I might not have the courage to change what I did, because I was weak, too weak to admit I needed attention, too weak to fight for what I had, and too strong in the arrogance of thinking I deserved more, that I could have it all. I drowned in my illusion of independence when, in reality, I was simply needy and cowardly. The world went on without me. Eduardo rebuilt his life. Enrique is probably already involved with another patient, or maybe not even that. Maybe he was also absorbed by his own omission. But I am still here, with the same broken braces, with the same crossed eyes, with the same shame that prevents me from smiling. I still have not been able to save enough money to fix my teeth, and maybe that is an eternal reminder, as if every difficult meal, every sore gum, every incomplete smile were a physical reminder of my mistake. Perhaps that is the worst part of cheating, not when you are cheated on, but when you are the one who cheats, because there is no way to escape your conscience. There is no block that can save you from yourself. And I see myself every day, I know who I am, and maybe that is why I do not need anyone to punish me. I am already serving my sentence.